ankle kicks, sweeps, that kind of thing, which you see a lot in MMA. Usually because their stance is a little bit different, whereas in Thai boxing, we're much more squared up. That way we can defend both sides seamlessly without having to make any adjustments in our stance. So what you'll see a lot of times in MMA or even in boxing, you got a lot more of a bladed stance. Both feet are kind of going in the same direction, which allows us to minimize our targets up top here. Whereas in Thai boxing, we're much more squared up, more neutral on both sides, just with a little back step with our dominant side. But both my feet are angled off in a way to where I can just pick them up right into that check and not have to make any adjustments. As I said, in MMA a lot, we're going to be a little straighter for various reasons, but that's why those calf kicks are so easy to do there. Because you're coming at an angle where you're able to get to this soft side of the leg, and then you see a lot of that happening, or even when they're taking leg kicks, seeing the leg get buckled over. Whereas when you're more squared up, you can brace for that kick, and it's not changing your stance up at all. I can absorb that and still be right here to fire off. Or even if someone's going for those calf kicks, that kick is usually coming right at my shin, so they're tending to hurt themselves. Instead of me having to do anything, I'm just not going to move, and that kick's going to go right into the top of my shin, as opposed to hitting me here on the side of the calf. So if I'm standing in this way, that kick is coming, hitting me here, and that's what's going to happen every time. Boom. Even worse, if I try to check it, all I'm doing is making it that much easier for them to kick that leg out of the way. Okay, so that calf kick is coming straight here. So if you got this foot here, all right, foot's pointed in this direction. If I'm kicking straight at it, I'm going to come right into the front of that shin. Okay, and in order for me to even get around it, I have to make this adjustment in order to come around. Okay, I can't just go straight into it there. But if their foot is straight or even angled more, then that's right there for me to hit, and I don't even have to make an adjustment. I can throw that kick straight at the leg, knowing that it's going to hit something soft, and it's going to change their stance up and cause them a lot of damage. Or even that's where those sweeps are there, because I can get to the outside of this foot. So that's something I'm always looking for. A lot of times when we're throwing our jab, we're rotating inwards, but then that leg kicks there, that ankle sweeps there, all those things are there. So I typically want to make sure I'm doing is, even though my body is rotating, my stance isn't changing, because that's going to change my defense. All right, every time somebody jabs, if you know they're rotating their leg, you also know that you have your own kicks there. Okay, so what we got to make sure we're doing is keeping our stance the same, even though our upper body is rotating. So in Thai boxing, what I'm trying to do is keep that boxing mentality with my upper torso. I'm still using my legs, I'm just not rotating in through them, which is going to invite kicks. Okay, so what you want to think about when you're doing is the angle of your foot should be going basically to their outside shoulder, their outside hip. So if that's their lead leg, in order for me to get around to this side, I'm going to have to adjust my stance in order to get that. I can't just throw right at it and come into the side of the foot there. Okay, so it's all about these angles. Okay, usually your back foot is pointed in the right direction. You don't really got to worry about it so much. It's this front one we have a lot of trouble with. Every time we're using this lead side, this lead arm, our hips are rotating, but which also makes our legs rotate too if we're not paying attention. So when I'm throwing my jab, I'm trying to keep my legs pointed in that same direction. So if that kick does come, one, I can brace for it here, and I can still follow up with that side. It's not buckling my base down. And two, it's much more difficult to get to that outside foot, that outside calf, to where they're doing that calf kick, ankle sweep, whatever it may be. So it's all about these angles here. Pay attention to this front one. Usually a good rule of thumb is if this is 90 degrees, this straight line, I don't ever want to be on the inside of that, because right there is where that's going to be. So I'm typically trying to stay at bare minimum lined up with their rear hip, basically is what I'm looking at. Okay, because I gotta make it difficult for them to get out there. So I can be in here more, but as long as the angle's there, pointing to the outside, it's going to be much more difficult for them to get around like that. It doesn't mean I need to stand super wide. It's just about the angle of my knee and my foot pointed in the direction of a kick coming. So I can brace for it if I want to, I can check for it if I want to, or I can move out of the way if I want to. But from that point, I'm going to have my options. Okay? I don't want to have to be standing on an angle like this, and every time it comes, I'm having to make this adjustment. Because the more adjustments that I have to make in order to defend your kick, the easier it is for you to use that against me. Okay? You know, every time you go for that kick, I have to adjust because there's no way for me to absorb this. All right? So I either have to defend or get out of the way. I can't hold my ground and take it. The other thing that tends to happen too is we always pick our leg up kind of in the same place. Even though the kick might be coming in different places. It might be going lower, middle, high, all the way up. So when I'm seeing a kick coming, I'm getting ready to check for it, but I'm not sitting there waiting for it. That's when you'll see people go over, go around, go through. Okay, so when that kick is coming at you, anticipate it, be able to read it, but you're also trying to meet it at the same time. Just like the kick is coming, my leg is coming up, and we're trying to meet together, instead of being there waiting for it. All right? Because typically, especially if somebody knows what they're doing, they're going to be able to adjust, avoid, change direction, stop, go with another thing. Always paying attention to these angles, so that way it's much more difficult for them to get around you. All right? So give it a try. Think about the angle of this front foot. I typically am just looking at their rear hip, wherever that is, and the angle of their leg. All right? So if I'm standing in a way that's pointed towards their rear shoulder, their rear hip, that's usually going to keep it to where even if this kick does come, it's hitting me on the front here, it's hitting me right in the shin, not getting on the side or here. Even more so when I'm throwing this lead hand, that's where I really need to watch out for that angle change, because my body is naturally wanting to turn in there. All right? So trying to hold yourself a little bit more squared up, even if I got to stare at my feet as I'm doing it for a while, until that becomes much more natural and I don't have to think about it. Or if you have somebody that is throwing a lot of those calf kicks, usually it's because your stance is too straight or too off in the other direction, and that's why they're able to get around that side, unless they are making these big adjustments in order to do that. But that's a little more obvious about what they're doing. All right, so give that a try, change those angles up, and think about your base.